All right, it's 7 o'clock. Is everybody ready? Okay, I'd like to call this meeting of Saanich Council to order on August the 10th at 7 p.m. We've got a long agenda today. We're going to start with the delegation, and then we're going to adopt minutes, some bylaws for final reading, then we'll get into the meat of our council agenda. So with that, I'd like to invite our delegation up to the microphone, the Help Sign Animal Support Society. Please come forward.
Hello, I'm Lavinia Rojas, the president of Help Sign Animals Support Society. And I'm here to ask the municipality to cooperate and finance the purchase of vegetation for the deer. Now, you're going to find that really weird, but I think it's a really great idea because I think it's a very good idea. And the reason is because even though they are going to be sterilized in October with vaccines, the deer still needs to eat, and they will still come down into gardens, and they will, come into the traffic. Now, having enough food for them in the Mount Dog, which is Saanich, we keep them all, as I can be sure what in the world those deer are going to do. But it could be a pilot program. See whether that will keep them there. I think it will. I think it work. Is there any questions?
I have one. Can you tell us a little bit more about your society? When it was started and how big it is, or successes, projects, things like
that? Mostly we work in the internet globally. We collect signatures around the world, and we get the governments to change their policies and to improve. For example, we just got an upgrade to the farm animals in British Columbia. British Columbia was the only province that they were not a code, and we're behind. So we collected signatures and presented to Ms. Popan, and she took it to the legislature. And essentially, we're very new. We started in December 2014.
Thank you for that. Any questions from Council? Councilor Plant.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and welcome to our meeting, and thank you for caring about Saanich enough to come up with this idea. But the question I have is, I'm not really sure what you're asking us to do, other than to plant plants.
Yes, I believe I mentioned it. The first thing I said at the beginning, that is, I am looking for finance, to buy the vegetation. We will find and hope to find people to help us to plant, but we need to buy the vegetation.
Any questions for any other councillors? All right, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
If there's no more discussion, then I'll move on with the next item agenda, the adoption of the minutes. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This next item is the adoption of the council minutes of July 20th and the special council minutes of July 20th and 21st.
Move adoption.
Second.
Call question, all in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. Let's move on to item C, bylaws for final reading. Madam Clerk, would you introduce the first item, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This next item is final reading of Heritage Designation Bylaw number 9340. This is to designate the exterior of the dwellings at 3918A and B Cary Road. These items were at public hearing a few weeks back, and council took the bylaws at that time to third reading.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question, all in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. Next item, please, Madam Clerk.
This is also a final reading item, Mr. Mayor. This is final reading of Community Plan Amendment Bylaw 9342. This will amend the official community plan of rural Saanich area local area plan policies in respect to extending the sewer service area for the public facilities and parks where there would be a significant community benefit.
Final reading. Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question, all in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. All right, well, that finishes item C in our agenda. I'll then now move on to item D, which is public input on the following items. So if you'd like to speak on the bylaws, Elk Lake, Beaver Lake Regional Park, Sanitary Sewer Bylaw Amendment, or the homes on Clover Bay Road, Cedar Hill Road. We've also got some resolutions for adoption, tenders for storm and sanitary replacement, and a contract amendment for the active network. And finally, reports from council members. Number one is human trafficking from Councillor Haynes. If you'd like to speak to any of those items, please come up to the microphone, give your name and address, and you've got 5 minutes. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak on these items? Please come forward.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, Councillors, staff, Ken Whitcroft, 1044 Inverness Road. I would like to speak to Section F, Resolution for Adoption, number 1, which is the tendering of storm and sanitary replacement. I believe 15 years ago I was here and I asked council in the past when it came to stormwater or wood stave replacement is to consider daylighting the creeks instead of keeping them buried under the ground. This is 15 years ago and I'm still seeing exactly the same actions, even though staff in the past have said, oh yes, we look at it every time. We have had no daylighting of our streams within our urban watersheds to this date. We've had some out in the rural areas, which is good, but nothing in the urban areas. So basically, I'm still wondering why we're still stumbling down that same road. Our watersheds are very important to us. I believe one of the councillors said that was one of her big things in all the candidates' meetings, the importance of our watersheds. Proper functioning condition of our watersheds is extremely important to the health of the people that live on the land. The healthier the watershed, the healthier the people, healthier the land, plant life and everything that goes with it. Why are we still having this ongoing effect of continuously keeping our streams underground? Future generations are going to benefit from this. And we're also going to look very, very good in the eyes of the world by bringing back our watersheds, the health of our watersheds. The health of our watersheds also affects our oceans and our foreshores. So I'm still curious why today we still keep going down that same road. And I would like to encourage that the new Director of Engineering maybe have some forethought on this aspect. Because in the report, it says that with the exception of Maplewood location, most of the pipes are located within neighborhood or with municipal right-of-ways through backyards. It's key. I can understand it if it's in a road right-of-way or in the roads that they can't be daylighted, but within urban land like backyards, Bowker Creek, we had a big one off of Camrose Crescent there that went through into the golf course years ago. No. Perfect opportunity, spoke to the people there. Most of them would have loved to have the natural creek in their backyards, but Saanich didn't basically go to them and let them know the benefits of it. So I'm still asking for this council to start changing direction and the way we go with what we're doing with our watersheds. The other aspect is that once we've daylighted it, we don't leave the cost of future generations with replacement of pipe in the future. when these ones fail. So in other words, when we look at cost savings, those are the benefits to the few people that come after us. Because we cannot continue to think constantly of ourselves today, but our actions must reflect those that come after us and the health of those that come after us. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Just a quick question to our Director of Engineering, because this piqued my interest. I think I'm correct in some of the restoration that was done around Swan Creek. There was an original proposal to culvert to cover up or put some piping into that area, and the engineer of the day decided the best thing to do was to actually restore that area to a more natural state. And I believe there's some material that's posted up on the trail there that speaks to that. What Mr. Rykoff speaking about going through backyards. How possible is that? And do we have a list of areas where we're considering daylighting the creeks?
Mr. Mayor, the question about daylighting in backyards, it may seem simple, but it could be quite invasive to the residents that it impacts. So it does change their yard and the property quite substantially. We don't have a list of backyards where we could be putting daylighting in. This could be something that we're looking at further when we've been talking about providing more of a stormwater master plan. And specifically looking at different watersheds within Saanich and seeing where there's opportunities to daylight. But presently that's work that needs to still happen, and we don't have a list to draw on at the moment, so we look at each case individually.
Okay, thank you for that. That helps me. Councillor Haynes, you're looking my way. Do you have a question?
No, I was just listening to Howard.
Okay, thank you. All right. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak? Please come forward. Any other members of the public wish to speak? Going for a second time?
It's on Normandy Creek? Or is that later in the...
Just like anything or on that particular...
If you'd like to come and address us, please come up to the microphone.
My name is Lillian Bursink. I live at 818 Royalwood Place. And I have a concern. I got a letter in the mail from Saanich that they are considering making Normandy Creek, the part behind us, making that continuously and making that a creek. It is not a creek at the moment. It is where McCall's is building at the moment, is renovating a building. I have a problem with some of the trees behind me. They have cleared that area. I have phoned the city, I have phoned...
Can I interrupt you? Are you speaking to one of the agenda items?
Oh, no, that's what I was asking, if that was part of it.
Oh, I apologize. No, this,
Okay.
this section for public input is specifically for these agenda items. I apologize.
I will come back.
Thank you.
Well, it's related to the addition of the streamside atlas to add Northern Creek. So
It's on the committee of the whole, right? Okay. All right. There'll be another chance for you to speak at the committee of the whole. I apologize for that. Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak on the agenda items that I listed earlier? Calling for a second time? Calling for a third time? Okay, we'll close the public input period, and we'll move on to section E, the bylaws. Madam Clerk, can you introduce the first item, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This first item is 3 readings of sanitary sewer amendment bylaw 9347. This will be to extend the sewer service area to include the washroom facilities at Beaver Beach and the filter beds in the sewer service area.
So moved.
Call the question, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Second reading, second reading.
Thank you. Call the question, all in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Motion's carried unanimously. It's all right. Someone second Councilor Plant. Thank you. Call the question, all in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. All right, we'll move to the second item, please, Madam Clerk. Thank you.
This item also is sewer service area amendment. This is 3 readings of the sanitary sewer amendment bylaw 9348 to extend the sewer service area to contain the building footprint at 4664 Coeur d'Alene Road. This item is also subject to a covenant to restrict further subdivision of that property. Final reading of this bylaw would be withheld pending registration of that covenant.
Second?
Call the question, all in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously.
Second reading.
Second?
Thank you. Call the question, all in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously.
Third reading.
Second?
Thank you. Call the question, all in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. All right, let's move to item E3, Madam Clerk.
This item is for first reading of zoning amendment bylaw 9345, rezoning the property at 4601 Port Bay Road to the RS12 zone for proposed residential subdivision. That's for one additional lot.
Move first reading.
Call the question, all in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously.
And this next item is first reading of zoning amendment bylaw 9346, rezoning the property at 3999 Cedar Hill Road to the zone RT4 attached housing for proposed 5-unit townhouse development.
Move first reading.
Second.
Call the question, all in favor? Opposed? Councilor Dermott is opposed. Motion carries. So both those items, 601 Port Bay Road and 399 Cedar Hill Road, will be going to public hearing on August 11th. Is that correct, Madam Clerk?
That is correct, Mr. Mayor.
The public is encouraged to write in or attend the meeting on that date and give their feedback. All right, with that, we'll move on to the next item, resolutions for adoption.
This first item for the resolutions for adoption is tender number 15 for the 2015 storm sanitary sewer replacement. The report of the Director of Engineering is recommending that Council award the tender for the project to John Mann Excavating Limited in the amount of $1,219,943.
With the recommendation.
Any discussion? Councilor Dermott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to reflect on the comments from Mr. Whitcroft. Prior to being elected to council in 2002, I spent a number of times at the bank there talking about the fact that it was time we moved our system of treatment of stormwater to a more sustainable and more modern system, mimicking nature to the highest degree possible, and essentially trying to utilize natural methods, essentially allowing it for infiltration, slow release, and so forth. After being elected, I brought up that same issue a number of times, and we have made some improvements, in my view, far too slowly to accomplish the effect that we need to accomplish. And most of this has happened prior to the current Director of Engineering assuming his position, of course. But I really think it's, and I'm pleased to hear we're going to have a master plan done in that respect. But we really need to start to look at how we are going to move more rapidly to doing things like daylighting creeks and to finding a way to get away from simply rushing stormwater off the land in pipes and into water courses where they often scour it, do damage, scour the water courses, do damage, and carry with them very often a considerable number of pollutants that are dumped right into the receiving waters wherever they might be. So I'm hopeful that we will move as quickly as possible towards that, because I agree, we are missing opportunities, and we are going through the process of replacing an infrastructure that we have learned was not entirely appropriate in the first place. I don't like to make the same mistake twice. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Brownell for the plan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too want to reflect that we've come a long way. Rain gardens, which have been implemented along Shelburne and other streets. There is a regional watershed management plan being worked on with municipalities within the region at the CRD. So I think some of the issues, and I'm glad to hear that engineering will ultimately get to it. I know it's been a long time coming, but there's a lot of players around watersheds. The only watershed I think Saanich actually has, the only one that's all ours, is Culprits. And we've been doing a lot of work on fixing things around the culprits. But I think that when the regional watershed management plan comes forward, there'll be some interesting opportunities. But I just want to say we've come a long way from where we started with runoff, because rain gardens are quite beneficial along roads. I know when we put the ones along Shelburne, there were lots of property owners who weren't too pleased about them. because of course the goal of a rain garden is to filter the pollutants, and some property owners wanted to plant them with flowers. So, because they don't look appealing to the property owner. So a lot of education has to happen as well as we move forward on looking at better ways of doing stormwater management, and we have to educate our public to recognize the benefits as well. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Plant.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I would say Council brought up the education also has to happen at this chair myself. I'm wondering if I can ask a question through you, Mr. Mayor, to the Director of Engineering in response to what Mr. Whitcroft had said. Is what lenses do we apply to potential daylighting of creeks? Is that something that we need to give you more direction to undertake, or do you feel you have a mandate to do that? Because I don't think anybody in this chamber likely would disagree. So I'm curious if we need to go to our strategic planning and implement that, or if you need a motion tonight that says that council is committed to daylighting as much as possible and therefore work with that. So if you could just perhaps give us an overview.
Yeah, through the Mayor and Council Plant, I think some other councils raised some good points on the work the engineering is doing today to try and either protect some of or improve the rainwater quality, daylight some of the streams, and some of those that have been touched on around the streetscape, we're putting rain curtains in, some of the treatments that we're requiring on private property owners, some of the work that we're doing with the societies to improve the watersheds that are existing today. And you may remember last year with the Blinkensaw Creek and some of the improvements that were done along there. And we continue to partner with many of those societies today. We certainly do look at the pipes that are in the ground and where we're replacing those if there's opportunities to daylight. So I think we understand that that mandate is there. There's quite a few considerations that need to go into it, and the feasibility of first if there's even the space to do it within the right-of-way or the boulevard to try and daylight. And depending on what the volume of, if it is an old stream side or if it's just a smaller pipe that might have been connecting a few homes. So I think we have that mandate there, but I certainly can provide more information to council on some of the challenges that we face when we're looking at the design for daylighting a pipe if needed.
Thank you. A follow-up then, if I may, through you, Mr. Mayor. For example, later on in the evening, we're going to be discussing an application that one of the amenities is to help with the daylighting of a creek, Gable Creek. And I'm just curious, does that fall when it kind of is in a park area, if that falls under the Board of Parks and Recreation, or if that still falls under engineering?
Through the Mayor and Council Plant, it can be a collaboration with both. If it's within the parks, they may take a bit more of a lead on it with some assistance from engineering, from design specs, and working with the society. You know, the work that we're talking about that's being undertaken in Mount Doug Park, for example, is something that we're doing in partnership with Friends of Mount Doug as well as engineering in parks.
Councillor Haynes.
I'd just like to commend staff and my colleagues for the awareness on this. Councillor Plant picked up that the one on Dieppe has actually got some amenities targeted at daylighting. Where I live, just as an example, on the corner of Prospect Lake and West Saanich, there was a recent daylighting, and it's been very, very wonderful to see. But it is tricky, it is expensive. I'm not sure, Mr. Whitworth, what we would do in private property. That's a very tricky one. But certainly, the efforts we are making are commendable, and the more we can do, the better. Thank you.
Councillor Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I want to point out that in recent years, well, not that recent actually, that all new buildings cannot displace more water off their land than was displaced before. So therefore, they have to do stormwater management on site. So you know, for new councillors, you'll see that, but every time we get an application, they'll designate which watershed they're in and what type of treatment's required. So, and the public has seen the advantages of that because it can be used for irrigation and such, and it reduces their flows into the system.
Okay. So call question on this if there's no more discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. All right, let's move on to item F2.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This next item is the report of the Director of Parks and Recreation. This is with regard to a contract amendment for Active Network Limited. The Director is recommending the Council authorize the execution of the proposed amendment to the product and services agreement with the Active Network.
With the recommendation.
Second, any discussion on this? So no discussion, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. All right, with that, we'll move to the next item, reports from members of council. G1. Madam Clerk, would you introduce this item, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This next item is titled Human Trafficking. The report of Councillor Haynes is recommending the Council support the North Central Local Government Association resolution to the Union of British Columbia Municipalities and encourage the municipalities to work collaboratively with local police forces and the RCMP in order to implement the recommendations found within the National Task Force on Sex Trafficking of Women and Girls in Canada's recent report. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I'd like to move the motion, and if there's a seconder, I'd like to speak to it.
Second. Councillor Haynes, go ahead.
I'd like to thank my colleagues for their time this evening. This is something that I started to work on in June, and I appreciated the dialogue with my colleagues and the feedback and questions around this space. I did actually meet with Chief Downey, and I'd like to ask Council shortly to invite Chief Downey to come up and give a verbal report on this. In June, Chief Downey and I shared Invisible Chains, it's his copy, and I've worked with the Northern Community that you see there, the North Central Local Government Association. When we did the writing of our motion, there was a change in the wording, and that came from input from Chief Downey on how we might embrace not just the RCMP, but the local police force, and also recognise the considerable work that's being done across the country. And I appreciate Donna Dupert's help in getting that worded such that it can support the motion from the North Central Local Government Association. There were some good questions around that wording, and in actual fact I heard back today that they think our wording is an improvement, and I believe on the floor at the UCBM they will be changing that wording. I got an email here from Shelley Wilbur, Councillor of the City of Dawson Creek. I got involved in this back in June, working with Laurie Rodenberg on the topic of human trafficking. I'm not going to talk much further. The report talks to itself. We will hear from Chief Downey. I would like to mention that in Saanich, we do considerable work with our environment. Members have brought forward a resolution on the Blue Dot to protect our right for a clean environment. Members have brought forward resolutions regarding post boxes to protect our seniors and residents' rights or benefits of postal services. We've had resolutions on GMO, genetic modified organism labelling. We've had resolutions on heat loops into lake. So Council does undertake additional work other than looking after our sewers and our roads. And I think that's a commendable and good thing. It's certainly an area that I appreciate the ability to work and to talk with my colleagues about. That said, I'd like to ask my colleagues for an invitation to Chief Downey to give us an update on where Saanich is in this space. Through the chair, could we invite Chief Downey up for a final report?
Yeah, normally as chair, I just invite the Chief up. Chief, would you like to come forward, please?
Good evening. I was asked to attend tonight's council meeting to speak to you on the issue of human trafficking. I was approached by Councillor Haynes. I have to excuse my voice, I'm still trailing the end of the summer cold here, so I apologize. To speak on this issue in relation to the UBCM resolution, as Madam Clerk has just read out. Human trafficking in particular, sex trafficking, is an issue that affects every community across Canada, and this is detailed in the report, No More, Ending Sex Trafficking in Canada. As defined by the United Nations Trafficking in Human Persons Protocol, human trafficking refers to, and I quote, the act of recruitment, transportation, transfer, harboring, or receipt of persons by means of threat or use of force or other forms of coercion, of abduction, of fraud, of deception, of the abuse of power, or of a position of vulnerability, or the giving or receiving of payments or benefits to achieve the consent of a person having control over another person for the purpose of exploitation. Exploitation shall include, according to the definition, at a minimum, the exploitation of the prostitution of others or other forms of sexual exploitation, forced labor of services, slavery or practices similar to slavery, servitude, or the removal of organs. The resolution before you is referring to the specific aspect of human trafficking in terms of prostitution or other forms of sexual exploitation. The question asked of me by Councillor Haynes was whether the Saanich Police would see the benefit of a resolution that sees communities lobby the RCMP to implement the recommendations of the National Task Force on Sex Trafficking of Women and Girls in Canada in their report entitled No More, Ending Sex Trafficking in Canada. Before I answer that question, I wanted to give you just a bit of context. In 2007, the Province of British Columbia Ministry of Justice established the Office to Combat Trafficking in Persons. This office is in place to protect victims of trafficking as well as prevent human trafficking. The office also provides tools and resources to help law enforcement and Crown Counsel assist in the prosecution of accused persons. In 2012, the RCMP published their national strategy on, to combat human trafficking. There's many task forces and organizations that are very interested in this topic, which is reported as being the most underreported and undetected criminal activity that we're aware of. And it's very much the hidden nature of this crime that demands our attention to it. There are many reports, excuse me,